Okay. No, no, no. Just save. Okay, I think we should be going live. Hopefully. Seems to be working, I think. I mean, waiting for a couple of people to join to let me know if it's working or not. Seems to be working. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Great. Okay, well, welcome. Those of you who are here, thanks for joining. As always, jumping in on this Monday just before lunch. Hopefully, wherever you are either getting ready for lunch or maybe it's evening. I know that some people are joining from Europe. So yeah, jumping into my some of my things here, looking into if I have any questions that I have collected previously, but feel free to drop your questions in the chat as always. So, a few things that I wanted to talk about. As always, we have some announcements. If you haven't seen the trailer for the podcast yet, last week we just dropped it on Friday, and we will be launching the first episode really, really soon. So, very excited about this project. We have some really great discussions coming up already. A few episodes are almost ready. We will be dropping them most likely every couple of weeks, at least for now. And then we'll see kind of the first season, how it goes, and what we do with the next season. And yeah, so we have some good discussions coming up from some Scrum Masters and people working who transitioned into a Scrum Master role recently, or people who are working with just Agile teams. So all of these things are coming. Lots of good insights for everyone. So that's one thing. Now, I actually call this podcast Defining a Great Product because that is one of the things that I was working on last week. So I know that the product owner guide is still kind of in the works, and my goal is to actually finish it before summer. But as I was actually looking into this, and I was working on some additional workshops and really just looking into the topic of defining a great product. So this is something that I think anyone on an agile team would need to know, right? Because what do we do with the product? We the every agile team technically is a product team, right? So we are switching the mindset from we're managing projects, and then in agile, with agile and scrum, we're building products. So that product definition is extremely important, and sometimes it kind of is bypassed or forgotten from some of the like how we are working with the team. So we kind of focus a lot on scrum and forget about product management. Now, if you're a scrum master, and you're working with a product owner, right? So that is definitely a way for you to help your team and help your PO, is to bring in some of the good practices into your work, right? So some of the ways of how you can help your product owner. We also had a video last week on the roadmaps. I was explaining how you can help your product owner with the roadmaps. And so I was working on that. Just wanted to kind of open up some of my notes. And I was creating a workshop that would help me kind of create a workflow for the team to define what their product is. And because they're starting a new product, I was giving a training for a group. And I was thinking what would make sense, what would make sense for a team who's starting out to do in order to have a good plan, have the product backlog created, and obviously get started, actually start sprinting, as we call it. And so a few things that we obviously looked into is we looked into the product vision. That is the first thing. So we talked about what would be the ideal product vision statement. And it's interesting that when often we start, right? Often people have very different understanding of what their product is. And that kind of creates difficulty when you're prioritizing the product backlog. And because no one knows actually, well, what is the most important? Well, we don't know who we are serving. And so we use statements. I don't know if you heard of the statement, which is called the elevator pitch. And so basically the statement goes as, for a target customer who wants to do something. And so for a target customer who wants to do something, so you're defining what your target customer wants to do. Our product, right, so is a type of product that allows them to brings in some kind of benefit to our customers. So that is just the elevator pitch. And I have a hi Litsa, I see a question in there. And I just wanted to, I know that it's hard to actually understand when I'm just talking about it. So let me find that info because I wanted to show it to you. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So let me do something like this. Okay, hopefully I will be sharing the right screen. Yes, I am sharing the right screen. Okay. Yeah, so basically this is the product vision template that you can be using with your team. And that is pretty good because it helps you identify who your customers are and what exactly your product is supposed to do to bring the key benefit, or why would people use it, your users, right? What is the competitive advantage, right? Unlike others. So you're trying to compare yourself to other competitors and highlight what is different, what is better for your product. So that is something that I have in my product owner guide, kind of briefly, but I do want to look into kind of add more information into that. So because I think it can be very helpful, right, for people. So that will be coming up soon. And I also do doing some writing user stories workshops. So that can be fun as well. Oh, we have greetings from Germany. Oh, hey, by the way, speaking about Germany, we have just launched a partnership with one of our other companies. So one of the people who was in my mentorship program, who is right now actually promoting and taking our products to Germany in German language that is currently launched, and you can find them if you are speaking German and you prefer some of my materials to be in German. You can actually go and check them out at Creativity Attracts Performance. So go check them out. They have just launched the Scrum Master Startup Guide in German. Okay. Questions. What to do when a team member doesn't want to attend the retro? So what to do? Let me put in their website actually while I was listening to it. So when we have, say, someone who doesn't want to do something, like think about it that way. We are in a working environment, right? So we're in a working environment, and one of the things that every team member needs to do is obviously, well, we're doing the work, right? Obviously. And when we're doing the work, we have not only just I'm doing my part or whatever I'm doing, but it's actually about other things that you would need to do for the team to be successful. For example, sprint planning, right? We need to be able to plan together. So we would come together to a planning so that we can plan for the upcoming sprint. Backlog refinement. Every team member is responsible for making sure they know what's in the product backlog and they're not surprised, and they ask questions in advance. So that is another responsibility of the team members. And attending the retro. Attending the retrospective is also one of the things that the team members need to do. So it's their responsibility as a team member. So I would kind of go back to talking to this team member. Obviously, you want to figure out, well, why don't they want to attend the retro? What is the problem there, right? And then trying to understand how you can maybe improve, make the retrospective more, much more relevant to them, because you obviously want to make sure that everybody takes something valuable from the retrospective. But in the end of the day, it's not like you can just decide not to come. Like imagine you have a director who decided to have a one-on-one with you, your manager. Can you just say, I don't want to go? No, you can't. That makes absolutely no sense. Well, so that is exactly the same thing with the retro. Well, sorry, you don't want to go there, but it's part of your job. And I think sometimes we just need to get back to just the basics, especially with people who we are having trouble with, I'd say. So yeah, I think sometimes you just need to go back to that. So I wanted to show you the website. So this is it, Creativity Attracts Performance. Right now we have worked on, this is their website. So like you can see the link. I'm gonna put it in chat as well. And they have just launched. I'm not sure kind of where on their website it would be. I think on the shop. Yes, so you can go into their shop and they have the translated version of the Scrum Master Startup Guide. So if you want it to be in German, here you go. And we are working on other products as well. So if you have any suggestions on what products we should work on next, let us know. Okay. Now, what else? We have some more questions. Aspiring Tentacle, hello. I'll get to your question. First, I'm gonna look into the Elitsa's other question. How to deal with dominant communication in our Things Retros reviews. I start with a one-on-one. Sometimes people do not realize that they're kind of taking over a lot of the attention on themselves. So just having the discussion with them, trying to understand, do you believe that maybe the team is not coming up with the best solutions? That's why you are jumping in. Or are you actually aware that you take over 90% of the time in most of the discussions? And say they're saying, yeah, I know, that's I'm the smartest one. whatever that is. They're kind of the ways how you can go about it. You can kind of stroke their ego a bit and reassure them that their opinion is valuable. Well, it really is the same for anyone on the team. Everybody's opinion is valuable, same for them. They're an expert. They definitely have some great ideas, but there is a but, right? So you want to get back to saying we are trying to create collaborative environment, and for that, we need to allow others speak as well. And for that, I need you sometimes to not share your opinion and instead wait for others to share it. So you're trying to bring them to that understanding that, yes, you would want them to share their opinions, but you want to make sure that they are aware of maybe their influence, right, on the rest of the team. And then if they are starting out, well, say you had a one-on-one, and then we're coming into the next meetings, and they just keep doing it the same way. They're like completely blanked out on whatever you said. You can start actually, after you already talked to them, to start calling them out in front of others, right? Saying, okay, you talked for long enough. I'm going to ask you to stop right now because I want to hear what others think. So you actually need to, at some point, interject and say, hey, it seems like an important point, but we need to move on to someone else, right? And then you can implement techniques like the talking stick, right? You can set up a timer for how long each person maybe should be like presenting their idea. So those things like that you can implement. But yeah, first start talking with them one-on-one. And then if that doesn't work, just start calling them out in the meetings. Okay. Cool. So the question from Aspiring Tentacle: how to write user stories for a very low level product, one that will be used by other systems rather than directly by a person. I mean, you don't write user stories for non-sentient beings. I think the user story format is just not the kind of format you would want to use. If you have more of a system that, like a platform that supports other systems, a user story, that's the whole point of a user story. It's a story of a user, of an actual person. And if you do not have a person to talk about, well, don't write a user story. Use anything else, right? There's so many different ways of how you can approach writing your product backlog items. I believe it's called feature. I'm trying to find it out. Feature driven development. Yes. Wait, I'm trying to find. I want to share with you the article that Mike Cohen, I think, wrote talking about that. Yes. So I'm going to share it in the chat. It's by Mike Cohen from the Mountain Goat software. And what he has here is that not everything needs to be a user story, obviously. So he talks about FDD, feature-driven development, and he gives a couple of examples in here of how you would write it, right? Where basically, instead of saying, as a user, I want to blah, 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 you're actually using the format. Let me go back. Realize that I'm being hidden by the little sign, the Scrum Master sign in the right corner. Anyway, so that's basically by Mike Cohen. Not everything needs to be a user story. And in here, here's the example of how you would write a good statement for your product backlog item, which is action the result of or by an object, right? Estimate the closing price of stock. Generate a unique identifier for a transaction. Change the text displayed on a kiosk. And so that is like a good start. You don't have to have a user story in here. And that would basically be something that you can use for creating the items in your product backlog. And then obviously you want to make sure that you're not just stopping in there and saying, oh, estimate the closing price of stock. I think it would make sense to be clear on where will it be used, maybe by which system it's going to be used, what it is going to be used for, kind of what is the next step behind it and why it is important to implement. And so that is how you would structure the items in your product backlog. Yeah. So these are some of the things. Awesome. I'm glad that it was helpful. Good, good, good. I wanted to show you some other things that I was working on. I wanted to do a little stream to kind of explain how I develop my guides or my workshop, not guides, but the workshop itself and how I think about it, because I think it's an important skill that you would want to have. Because, for example, right, you have a team writing user stories. They maybe don't know how to approach it the right way, and you would need to kind of jump in and potentially teach them, do a quick training or a class to tell them how to do it the right way, right? And so you would want to structure a workshop that will allow them to do it. And obviously, you don't want it to be just a presentation, right? And so that is something that is important to kind of think about when you're creating your workshops. And so I have created a quick little guide that I've started to just write down some of the things. So just going to be a sneak peek into a workshop that I'm working on. Keep jumping between my screen share and myself. Okay. So this is, as you can see, it's just written like in a big text in here. And basically what I was thinking about is like, how can I structure it for about an hour and a half? That's usually my workshop time, 2 hours, right? That would help the team to not only learn something with the presentation, right? But also do some exercises, some practical stuff. Yeah, see the question, I'll answer, give me a second. And so I'm thinking about, okay, let's do a little presentation, right? Let's talk about what it is. Then I'm immediately jumping into the next exercise, right? Then this is another presentation. And so basically I was just kind of writing down all of the things that I think are important to cover. So this is for writing user story. And think about that, okay, I need to teach the team about writing user stories. What do they need to know? Well, first they need to understand what a user story is, a little bit about history, why it is important. Okay, once we have it, what we need to have some exercise. Obviously, we want to have some practice to creating user stories. But maybe that early in the workshop, it's not the right way, like not the right moment to present, to actually jump into that practice exercise. So we're starting off with a simple exercise. Is this a good user story? So we're doing a quick overview of, let's take some examples, right? And then that exercise leads into into the second presentation, where in this exercise, we're going to see some bad user stories, right? And which means that it is a good segue into the next point where I talk about common problems when people are writing user stories. So that kind of gives an extra learning layer to that workshop, right? What else is important for when we're talking about user stories? Well, we know that user stories have a user. So as a user, I want to show that. We need to know who our user is. We need to understand them. And so I thought, let's actually jump into and trying to understand, help the participants see that first part, how important it is, and that I'm doing through identifying user roles and personas and kind of giving them an idea of what it is, why it is important. Because next step in here is practice. So basically at this point of the workshop, we already know what user story is, we know what we need to avoid, and we know where to start, right, with our user. And so we're starting to create the user stories, right? So we're going through the identifying the users and customers and creating that. And so that's kind of the bulk of the workshop that I was thinking about, and then adding some extra things like story splitting techniques, thinking about acceptance criteria, all of those things that could be useful, you know? So yeah, let me jump back in because there is a question. Okay. Sorry. Is it possible to have an agile transformation when you have a customer who isn't agile? Meaning that they will not allow us to deploy in their production frequently. It doesn't have to be deployed in production. I think that is one of the misconceptions. One of the misconceptions with Agile and Scrum is that you have to deploy to production every sprint. This is not it. So there is a difference between we are deploying to production and we are delivering. So when we are delivering every sprint, we're not actually automatically putting it into production. So we still deliver it. It's just that we want it to be usable and functional so that we can show how it works, which means that we potentially will be putting it into like a UAT environment where we can showcase it. So if obviously we want our UAT environment to be as close to production as possible, so when we push it into production, we don't have any big issues in there. And that would be kind of how you would approach it. You can still definitely do that, right? So your customer isn't agile. I think the most important part with this is to be able to involve them early and frequently. So yes, you're not going to be releasing to production, but you still want them to come to your sprint reviews every sprint, ideally, right? So you still want them to come to see what you have developed, how it looks, the functionality, right? Kind of interact with it. Maybe they can do some UAT testing on their side, like business testing. And then in this case, this will be very still agile, still aligned with Scrum and Agile principles, and they don't have to transform themselves. Right? You just want to make sure that they're actually involved on a sprint by sprint basis. If they don't want to at all be involved in a sprint by sprint basis, I kind of want to say that you don't have to use Scrum in this case because you won't be getting any benefits from it anyway. Because the whole point of Scrum is to have something completed, right? To have customers' feedback on that functionality, like the real ongoing customer feedback. And if you cannot achieve that every sprint, then I'm not sure that you're going to benefit from Scrum at all. Just do it waterfall, you know? Like, it's not like you're going to have happier customer by the end of it, right? That's why you want to involve them frequently. Some good new questions. We have Carla and Prince. Hello, welcome. So Carla is asking, is it possible to get a Scrum Master opportunity without experience? I have many training and certification, but it is hard to have the first opportunity. I mean, the answer is yes, it is possible, but it is going to be pretty difficult. The one of the episodes that is coming up, I am actually talking with someone who transitioned recently from a very different role, and she really took the time, like 6 months she set aside to transition into the role. And her first opportunity was the one that she got without having the Scrum Master experience previously. So that was very well, something that definitely was difficult to get, but she was able to get it. One of the things that she actually suggested is to work with agencies who potentially will be able to place you in a good place. So, not just kind of going on your own, but potentially looking into if you can go into an agency that can place you somewhere, maybe like on a short term contract. So, yeah. And I have quite a few examples. I have, it's very interesting actually. I've just had in my mentorship program, I have someone who also transitioned from a completely different role, and she also found her role pretty quickly in the like as a Scrum Master, even though she didn't have any experience before, which I find those are very inspirational stories. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? Rince is asking, what do you think is the best way to introduce Agile to the management team? Oh, Agile to the management team. So I did that introduction some time ago for the management team. And what you want to focus on really is the business side, right? And thanks for being here, Manuel. So, what you want to make sure that you're not just going into, say, Scrum details or Agile details, principles, like deep dive into those items. But instead, you want to focus on why would they care? Why do they want to transition to Agile? Right? What would make sense for them? Because we often kind of focus a bit too much on the theory and how do we implement it, and we forget to actually put it in perspective for people of how it's going to help them. And for specifically the management team, you want to highlight the key benefits, right? Why are we trying to move to Agile? Really? Let's think about it. Well, obviously, the one of the things that we're trying to do when moving to Agile is we are trying to create better products. So, better products, happier customers, and obviously more motivated teams. So those are some of the things that they would care about. Right? And so that would be where you would focus on first. What else is in it for them? Well, normally less stress, right? So what you want to highlight is when we are building like innovating or we're building new products, the complexity of the work is pretty high. And the reality of things is that we cannot control the factors that are going to impact our success. So we potentially will have a lot of factors that will be coming into the work and that will make all of our plans completely useless. And then that is very scary because we used to have plans, we used to be able to track performance based on those plans, but we can no longer do that. And so when we're implementing Agile, we are, instead of trying to control every single factor, we're trying to reduce risk, right? So one of the other positive things that you want to give to people is that, well, to management, that they would care, is it reduces risk when you are creating the when you're creating products. What risk are we talking about? We are reducing risk that the company is going to spend a lot of money and time on building something that no one wants, like basically wasting companies' money and time. You are reducing risk of non-delivery because you have frequent delivery, the management will have much more visibility on what is going on and the progress of work, because every sprint will have something to show, right? So if we're doing Scrum, then that is one of the other benefits, that we're building more visibility. And so you want to really focus on the positive things first to kind of show what's in it for them. And then apart from like kind of the next step that you want to make sure you do when you're introducing Agile to the management team is to highlight their role in it. Because a lot of the times management and like management or executive teams kind of say, oh, I want the company to be agile, and that's it, good luck, right? The problem is that without management support, agility is not going to happen. And so they have a very important, crucial role, a leadership role in that agile transformation. And so I think that would be a good, and if you're, let's say you're doing a workshop or a training session, that would be a good ending of this, kind of highlighting what their role is, why it is important for them to get involved, and what can they do to help the teams be more successful. And it comes back to the servant leadership, right? Setting clear goals, removing impediments, being there to support the teams, but letting them do their work to self-organize. And so all of the things that you would want to highlight. So I think those would be the things that you would do. So just to summarize, what would be the best way to introduce Agile to the management teams is you start off with highlighting the key benefits of agility to them. That would include things like increasing visibility, reducing risk, building better products, having more motivated teams. The reason why it is important is that when we're building products, there will be a lot of factors that will impact the products and the results that we cannot control, we cannot predict. The only thing we can do is minimize the risk. And Agile or Scrum approaches are able to do that, to help us with that. And then you finish up with talking about what the role of management teams is, which is that of a servant leadership, where we want them to let people self-organize, set clear goals for them, remove impediments, and be there to support the team and create the environment of trust. So, a quick summary. So I hope that helps. Okay, we have a question from Emmanuel. I don't know if you can hear my cat going crazy behind the door. Okay, we have Jose as well. Okay, so Emmanuel, what is the difference between Scrum Master and an Agile coach? I actually have a video on that. And technically, the difference is in the organization, the Scrum Master is usually seen as more entry position, not entry, but like, okay, let's put it that way, less senior position, but the Agile coach is like a senior position, which is really an artificial way to create hierarchy in the organization, right? By splitting Scrum Master and Agile coach into two different hierarchies. The thing is that basically Scrum Master, a good Scrum Master is an Agile coach, like in the sense of how the organization looks at the role. So a good Scrum Master will still work with everyone in the organization, including the management teams, the executives, right? And so that kind of sets them a bit more on the higher level of hierarchy, you know, but generally it's just artificial way to create hierarchy in the organization, and also for Scrum Masters to earn more money. Right? If you're a Scrum Master with a lot of experience and then you start kind of showing yourself or coming to the companies or as an Agile coach, you can ask for more money. Really, I think that's how I look at it. And unfortunately, Scrum Master role is seen often as something that only is associated with Scrum. Like, oh, a Scrum Master is just Scrum related. They don't know anything else, right? And the Agile coach is just the whole Agile thing. That is not true. Scrum Master obviously is focused on Scrum, but not on the process, on principles and values. And those principles and values go back to Agile principles and values. And Scrum itself, the Scrum Guide just tells us the basics of what to do, but it doesn't tell us how. So the Scrum Master needs to bring in a lot of Agile practices that are not part of Scrum. So the Scrum Master will be doing just generally Agile stuff, not just Scrum, right? So technically, that's kind of how you would look at it, I think. Okay, so the question from Jose, I think that's basically to follow up on my previous explanation. What specifically you think should be the management role aside from facilitate and support? Well, I think there's more in facilitate and support than just that, right? It seems like very minor if we just say it that way, facilitate and support, but it includes a lot of stuff. I think one of the key things is related to goal setting. Often there is like the goals, the way the organization sets goals is not very good. And usually management or executives don't spend enough time to clarify that, because basically their role is to make sure that whoever is on the team, any person, like you wake them up at 3 a.m., they can tell you how their work contributes to the company big goals, right? So that's kind of the way you would want to go about it. They need to work on very clear goals, use some kind of practices that can help with that, and communicate those goals clearly so that the teams know exactly why whatever they're working on is so important and how it contributes to the bigger picture. So there's a lot of that, a lot of work already on this side, especially since communication usually means over communication. You need to rinse and repeat all of the time to make sure that everybody knows what the goals are. And then protecting the team, I think, from impediments or external forces, let's put it that way, that might be impacting their success. So if we have in organization, if we have in a way some organizational processes that are outdated or just not really working for how the organization works right now and are slowing the progress, well, normally the team will not be able to fix that, right? And so we would say the Scrum Master would be the person to help remove impediments. But the Scrum Master on their own usually cannot do that. They need support from management, right? So we need to often have someone from the management team who has the power in the organization to sometimes intervene to help make decisions, to help make big changes in the organization. So that is where they would be stepping in. And then I think the helping create a good culture and environment of trust, safe environment for the company, for the teams to work together. That is also something that they would work on, right? Kind of the culture, overall culture of the organization. And that might mean that we once again need to change some processes. We maybe need to adjust how we hire or how we fire people. There might be some tough decisions that the management might need to take to make sure that the teams we're working with, we have the right people in there, right? And that means that they might need to identify if certain people are no longer aligned with the with the company values or culture, which is that of becoming more agile. So those would be the things. Yeah, and how to convince them to let go of micromanaging. To let go of micromanagement. I don't know if you can convince someone. There is this one thing that we often say, how do you coach someone who doesn't want to be coached? You don't, right? And so that kind of comes back to the same thing in here. If they are open to changing the ways they manage people, if they want to become more of leaders rather than managers, it's more about coaching them and helping them understand where they can let go. If they don't want to do that, you're going to have a hard time, and you might actually need to potentially escalate and find other ways to reduce the negative effect micromanaging might have on the team. But there are some things that you can definitely help with. First of all, it's delegation. So often, why don't we want to let go of micromanaging? Because we feel that if we do, we're going to lose control and the quality of the work is going to become much less, and we will still be accountable, like held accountable for the results. So that's why we're micromanaging, because we feel like, well, they're going to come to me and ask, what have I done if the team is not performing? So I need to do something to make sure the team performs. And that's why we're kind of jumping into that micromanagement mindset. And so what you want to do is to work with them on finding ways to delegate certain tasks. You cannot just delegate something, right? Completely delegate and forget about it. You want to actually have a process for making it consciously and responsibly, right? And so in this way, what you do is you are trying to understand what are all the things that they are currently feel they need to micromanage. So you list it all out with them. And then you look at this list and say, well, which items in this list potentially can be delegated? Potentially can be delegated. We're not delegating them right now, but just kind of we're getting a bit of a sense of what tasks might be delegatable. You identify those tasks, and then you start really one by one. You take one task and you say, okay, well, here's where you're micromanaging. Seems like you would be okay delegating it if we had someone good you can delegate it to. Benefit to you, you'll have more time on more important stuff, right? You won't have to micromanage people. You will have the results you want and you don't have to micromanage. So, and then you create a plan for being able to delegate that task. Usually it would include doing some knowledge transfer, some training, finding the right person we can delegate to, building relationships between the manager and the person. And so at some point, you slowly would want them to let go and say, okay, this task is now delegated, right? So you create a plan. Maybe at the beginning, they will need to come back and verify how this delegation is going every day. Then you reduce the cadence of verification, and then eventually this task is completely delegated and they don't feel like they need to micromanage. So that is a way to one by one to delegate tasks. You also want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you have very, very high visibility and transparency around what the team does. So whatever you can do to increase transparency and visibility, do that. And that basically will make them feel more in control. So that's what you're trying. It's not about micromanaging. It's not about letting go of micromanaging. It's letting go of control. And so you want to give them a way to feel that they're still in control and they still know what's going on without being there like every second and micromanaging every single task. But yeah, I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, Thomas. Hello, hello. What are you saying in here? In my case, I am a PM and the tech team used to use Kanban, but I'm trying to change to Scrum. We don't have a Scrum Master and I have to do all on my own. Any recommendation for the successful migration? Why do you want to use Scrum? I always ask, same as why do you want to use Kanban versus Scrum? Why do you want to use Scrum versus Kanban? So I think first you need to identify whether switching to Scrum is going to help. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? Is it you want to make sure that you're doing a better prioritization and that you are delivering value um, more frequently, that you have a bit more structure around how you organize? Okay. So because you think it's better for prioritization. Well, the Kanban is not going anywhere, right? So you still use Kanban within every sprint. The only thing that you're changing is that you are adding more structure to planning. You actually not changing as much. So you would start with, I think, just planning, right? So first you need to decide what would be the cadence. So say you go with a traditional 2 week for now, and then you'll figure out if it is the right length of a sprint. And so you start with just planning, right? So you set up the planning, you say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to plan for 2 weeks only. And then whatever coming our way, new tasks and everything, we're going to keep it in our product backlog and we're going to review it regularly. But we're going to focus on what we have planned for the sprint. So you start implementing sprint planning, right? And then you want to add basically regular cadences for the review. Review might be the last one you add because I think you will need to do a bit more background work for that. And I'm going to explain why. But you would want to have the sprint retrospective. So kind of just schedule planning and retrospective on a regular cadence. Agree with the team what time would make sense. For the sprint review, start with figuring out who are the potential customers, users, or stakeholders for the product, right? So sprint review might take a bit more time to really set up, but you can already get started with the planning and retro. If you want to learn more on how to set up sprint reviews, I do have a video where I talk about it. So not to cover the whole video, I think go watch it to help you with that. But yeah, just get started with a little bit of how you would set up the sprint. Try it out for a few sprints, and then in one of the retrospectives, right, you can come back and say, okay, what do you think? How is it going? What are some of the challenges that we're seeing? What do we need to adapt? Right now, just go with setting up the process and getting into the cadence of doing it. Oh, so Carla, follow up. Is not possible to use Scrum and Kanban at the same time? Something like a Scrumban. Scrumban is not a thing. It's not a framework. You can use Kanban within Scrum. And why I say Scrumban is not a thing? Because Scrumban is basically cherry picking Scrum and Kanban and taking only the things that you want. And basically it means that you're doing both wrong. You can use Kanban with Scrum. And basically the way it would work, you use just a regular Scrum, like sprints to sprints, but within every sprint, you would use Kanban. And so you would need to set up the rules basically on both sides, and you can benefit from both Scrum and Kanban, but you have to implement both of them fully 100%, not just create your own framework, right? And also, I am to the Thomas's question. I mean, when they say Kanban, I have a sneaky suspicion that really they just have a Kanban board, but they're not using the Kanban method because there are a lot of rules. I have a video. I have too many videos. I have a video on the Kanban, right? It's called "This is not Kanban" or "You're doing Kanban wrong," I think. And that's where I talk about it's not about just the board, it's actually about all of the rules that come with the Kanban method that you need to implement, right? So I think that your team basically was not using any process and calling it Kanban. I mean, I'm pessimistic, but I'm pretty sure that that's really what it was. Okay, Dargan have a question. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. How to get more experience as a Scrum Master with no professional experience? I have certifications. Well, if you try to look obviously for the Scrum Master role, but if you can't, maybe look for an organization where you can potentially continue to do whatever role you're doing right now, but an organization that has Agile or Scrum teams that is going through an Agile transformation. And then in this case, you would be able potentially to get closer to a Scrum and Agile team and work with them, and that will help you get some of that experience. If you are working with an organization right now, if you're part of the team, then you can try out doing some of the Scrum Master work, right? Facilitating, maybe setting in some of the processes, helping with retrospectives, improving optimization, and that will give you some of that experience. I do have a couple of videos on that. Page 16. How do you plan the capacity of a team for large features in a release? You depends on what are you trying to find. Are you trying to create an accurate plan? Because you can't, right? That's not going to happen. But generally, you would need to have some kind of data to really be able to do that. And what I mean by that, if you have never used, if this team is new, or they have never worked together, or they have never used estimation before, you will not be able to really plan ahead. You need the team to work through some sprints, ideally from 3 to even 9, to start collecting the data. And that way you will be able to plan a bit in advance for the rest of the release. And the last video I did on the roadmaps actually explains a little bit about that. So we usually would go with very high level estimation. So you have a large feature, you won't be able to estimate it. It means that you do need to do some extra work planning, breaking it down, maybe not to like very, very detailed items, but just breaking it down to estimatable items. High level estimations, as always, right? We don't guarantee, especially when we're looking really far ahead and we don't have as much information on the work that we're going to do. So in this case, you do very high level estimation. So do some extra planning, breaking it down. You do need to have some data already collected as well to be able to do that. Yeah, and definitely look into my last week's video that I posted Thursday. Elitsa has a good question, which is, what is your opinion on SAFe? How agile is it for you? I think a lot of people in the agile community are very like anti-SAFe. Sounds kind of weird, but they don't really like the SAFe approach or methodology, however you call it, because it is pretty rigid. Like if you look into how it is structured, then there are a lot of processes, there's hierarchy, who does what, some of the tasks are separated. Here's the thing, there are quite a few companies that are doing pretty well with SAFe. So they're able to deliver and plan. I think that there is a bit more structure than in Scrum. But I think if you stay true to the Agile values and principles, you can get good value out of SAFe, really. I don't have the personal example of a company that successfully implemented SAFe. It's just more of the information I would receive from my mentees who would be working in a SAFe environment as Scrum Masters for the teams and would kind of share how it was well structured and they're kind of were able to do a good work with the teams, right? Be able to do that planning. They have the PI planning that they do for the quarter, so they have good things in there. They have some good ways to organize the work. I think important part here is that SAFe is created specifically for big organizations, like big scale. And I think having some kind of structure that helps you organize it is good. Is SAFe the best structure? I don't know. It's just that if we just take Scrum, it can work, but it is limited to how many teams it can work with. If you have a product that has 20 teams working on it, just using basic Scrum is quickly going to get overwhelming. You need to have a bit more structure than that. And that is why potentially processes like SAFe can be helpful. Now, what I do want to once again come back to is the Agile principles and values. So this is what you always need to come back to. What I mean by that is one of the things that I think I heard one of the questions from in one of the mentorship sessions I did is my RT, I think, release train engineer, which is kind of someone who a Scrum Master reports to, I believe. Oh, my release train engineer made a decision on how the processes will be in the team, right? And it doesn't work for us. I'm like, okay, well, don't do that. If it doesn't work for your team, and this process is not like a compliance related process that cannot be changed, then go back to that release train engineer and discuss, why are we doing that? That doesn't make sense. We need to change that, right? It absolutely has no need to exist, right? I think it was actually one of my podcasts that is coming up where we talked about that, right? And he says, oh, we have this kind of review and this other review. And so people feel that it's the same thing, so they don't like going there, and stakeholders also don't like it. But the release train engineer has decided that this is how it's supposed to be. Well, here's where we go individuals and interactions or processes and tools. We go back and we discuss. We say, okay, here's the data, here's the evidence. It doesn't work. I know that it was maybe a good idea when we implemented it, but right now it no longer works. Continuous inspection adaptation, we need to change that. So if you stay true, I think, to the values and principles, you can find some, I think, good structure in it and be able to, create good collaboration between the teams. But yeah, I don't know enough about SAFe to like or hate it. I did do a training on it and never got the certification. But yeah, like when I did the training, the process looked overwhelming. I looked at it and like, I will never remember what it is, seems way too complicated. But the reality is, when we're talking about big organizations, it is complicated, like the number of different levels that exist in an organization, right? So it's maybe not even about safe, it's about the company itself that you're implementing it in. Essa has a nice question there. How do you explain the work of a Scrum Master to a 5-year-old kid? A good one. That of a teacher or maybe a counselor in a camp. Really, that's what it is. It's someone who brings the kids together, the people together, and helps them get organized, provides some, like, facilitates maybe some activities for them to help them work better together. Yeah, like teacher, a counselor. I think that would be the easiest way, because they, like, a kid will already have an understanding of what a teacher does, right? So I think that can be a good, like, a good association. Okay, Carla asks, do you think Agile is for all businesses? After COVID, I think, happened, we have seen that, yes. We have seen that many businesses were not able to survive. Potentially, agile approaches might have helped them. Doesn't mean that they would have been like the epiphany of like business development. But I think agility is really about that inspection, adaptation, and working together. I think in our world right now, we have a lot of complexity in the in kind of how we work. We have internet, people are working remotely, we have people who are working in all over the globe, right? And so agile can be helpful in all of those things. It's just every business is becoming much more complex, and so in this case it means that everybody can benefit from it. I think even sometimes, I don't think that you would implement Scrum in every single situation because it might not make sense for all of the businesses. But agile ways of working, I think they make sense in a lot of businesses. So I think, yeah, every business, every kind of product can benefit from some of the agile principles and values. Okay, I'm gonna be coming up to the end of it. I'll try to answer the last couple of questions. Okay. So Lisa is asking, you mentioned that you also visited the Scrum Facilitation training. Yes, that is PSFS by Scrum.org, which is the Professional Scrum Facilitation Skills. It's a one-day training. That was really helpful. And in terms of, can I recommend books that helped me on the way? I think books are not going to help you to the level that actual practice will. You need to practice. You need to go in and try to different techniques. And there are so many different techniques that you can find online. There is liberating structures that I talk about often, right? What you need is to take the like facilitation techniques you already know right now and use them and inspect how it went, and you will be able to adapt. There is like no other way, because just reading books is not as helpful when we're talking about facilitation, right? I haven't read any facilitation specific books, but what do I usually do is I'm looking up some exercises that I want to do, right? So I'd look up an exercise and then I will try to use it in the next workshop I'm going to do. And that's how I learn, really. So I'm not going to read like a full book. I have the Liberating Structures book, right? They have this, but I've never read the book from cover to cover. I just looking into specific exercises and I'm taking in the exercise and I'm like modifying it and I'm just using it. So yeah, that's kind of how you want to go about it. So in terms of the website, also look into, I think, Tiny Cupcakes. Tiny Cupcakes. Wait, let me find it. No, it was something else then. Wait. Agile exercises. Tasty Cupcakes. Okay, I found it. Okay, so here's a website for you. It's called, oops, sorry, Tasty Cupcakes. So that one has some cool ideas. Take it and, just use them. And then you have the Liberating Structures, obviously. That's the website where you can find some extra things. And already with just these two websites, you have so much information, you don't need a book. Okay, and I'm answering the last question, so don't try to ask more questions, okay? By Thomas. If a sprint ends, but the stakeholders change the date for release, and that gives us more time to add more features, is it better to complete the sprint and create a new one or change the date of the sprint? Always keep the sprint as is. It doesn't matter where your release date is. Your sprints should not be impacted by external forces, right? So sometimes people try to align their sprints with the release date. Like right now, I'm working with some teams, and our sprints were 2 weeks. And then we had like a release that was kind of in the middle of the sprint, like the official release, quarter end. And so teams said, oh, we're going to do a 1 week sprint. That basically just ruined all of the data we have been collecting up until now. Like all of that velocity, all of that data of how much work we're able to accomplish, gone. Like you can throw it away immediately, just because you switched the sprint. So sprints should only be impacted by the team's official decision to change the length of the sprint for a long period of time. So if we say, well, 2 week sprints are too short for us, let's go for 3 week sprints, let's try it out. Then you change officially your sprints to 3 week sprints, and then you run with it for several months, like 6 months, and then you reanalyze. But you don't change a sprint like that. Never. Never. Yeah. It is a very, very bad practice. So yeah, I hope this answers these questions. This one, last one, obviously, and then I hope I was able to answer all of the questions that you had here. It was a slow start today. I think now we're kind of getting into the vacation season. I am going on vacation in 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, a bit less than that, where I obviously will continue to post, but not as much. I won't be doing streams, obviously, but you will still be able to contact us. Everything will still be like the store will be open, and I'll try to answer some of the questions whenever I can. But I'll also try to disconnect and really enjoy my time with my family during that time. So I'll be out for about 2 weeks in the second part of July. But thank you so much for joining, I think, this last stream before August. And I'll see you, I think, in August, back in August. Hopefully, not everyone will be on vacation during that time, and you'll be able to join me for that stream. And thank you so much. Okay.